Hey, I'm Shaye Wanner, and you are listening to the Casual Cattle Conversations podcast. Whether you are a seasoned rancher or just curious about the cattle world, this podcast dives into the stories, science, and strategies shaping the future of ranching. Let's get started and keep your herd ahead of the herd. Folks, today we are visiting with Justin, who is a national sales manager for range and pasture with Envu, but we're specifically talking about RangeView. And we are visiting with Shane, who is the national sales manager for Ceres Tag. This conversation is going to focus on how ranchers can utilize the integration of these technologies to access better grazing and land utilization data, forage intake on grazing cattle, as well as monitoring and tracking of cattle to make more informed management decisions, whether that's grazing patterns, theft, etc. So there are a lot of different features, benefits, and attributes that we are going to be discussing today. I know you are going to find it so interesting just because it's so exciting to see what technology is truly out there and has been designed and built specifically for ranchers. So let's get right to it and visit with Justin and Shane. All right, well, Shane and Justin, it is a pleasure to be visiting with you this morning, and I guess good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever people are listening to this podcast episode. But to get started, I'm curious why each of you, as individuals, bet on the beef industry. Shane, let's start with you.
Yes, ma'am. Well, besides growing up in the industry and believing that beef is the far superior protein to anything else in the market, I just believe that it's important for us to use the range and the animals to the best of our ability. And we know ruminants upcycle better than anything on earth, and cattle are the best ruminants out there. So,
All right. And Justin, how about yourself?
Likewise, I agree with Shane. I grew up in the industry and managed ranches, but again, there's 880 million acres of range and pasture. That the best way to turn that into a high quality food source, and provides sustainability and stability in the food chain is the livestock industry to go out and to use that resource.
You are both with two different companies. Justin, you are with RangeView, and Shane, you are with Ceres Tag, and we're going to be talking about how ranchers are using both of your technologies together and how they integrate and the value that individuals are seeing with those two technologies. But to get started, I'd like to hear kind of a high-level description of each of what you've got going on. Longtime listeners know that Ceres Tag has been on the show before, but RangeView is new, so Justin, let's start with you, and if you wouldn't mind sharing kind of a high-level description of who is RangeView, what are you offering?
You bet. RangeView is a digital platform, land management platform as part of the Envu's range and pasture portfolio. Envu came with some products a few years ago, 2020 is when we launched a few of the key ones that were significant new technology and new modes of action in the range and pasture space to increase forage, to release higher quality forage, and just offer more equity to a rancher. But as they received that by using these products, they also had a new and improved resource that they needed to manage. And so we've developed RangeView to help them do that. We could use RangeView to not only scout these invasive species, create treatment maps, and be able to use that herbicide to get that outcome, but then we still wanted to build forage monitoring, range and a pasture management platform, and other ways to make sure we're the best stewards of that new resource that we created. But one thing that we were very focused on is that it was made and dedicated to the range and pasture space. It was not a cropping program. It was not some canned program or another program that someone had out there. It was kind of just got a new facelift and shoehorned into the space. It was purpose built for the range and pasture space.
All right. And Shane, would you mind sharing kind of that high-level description of who is Ceres Tag?
yes, absolutely. So, Ceres Tag is the world's first direct-to-satellite animal intelligence platform. So, we are solar-powered direct-to-satellite ear tags that generate dynamic phenotypes direct to management softwares. And the reason we want to sit and talk about the partnership with RangeView is because we don't have an end user software. So our information gets put into the RangeView software to help end users understand how they can take dry matter intake from every animal and make better grazing decisions, as well as a number of other dynamic phenotypes that come from understanding down to the minute data on how many minutes every animal spends grazing, drinking, resting, ruminating, and moving every 6 hours, and also getting up to down to the minute downloads of high and low activity alerts if something is going wrong with any of their animals.
Awesome. Well, both of these technologies, even separately, sound like they are offering a lot of information and a lot of value to ranchers. Justin, you already talked about a few of the benefits that ranchers receive when using this RangeView platform, but do you want to go into a little more depth about why ranchers are turning to this program to help make their operations more profitable and make better decisions?
Absolutely. And many of the folks that are maybe listening to this podcast or are listening are used to the old ranching for profit platform. And they always taught us in that platform that you need to be working on the ranch instead of working in the ranch. Well, we all know with the amount of labor that we have nowadays, that's reducing all the time. We're always struggling to get all of our workload matched. That RangeView is a great way for you to be working on the ranch while you're working in the ranch. It's that digital satellite solution to tell you we have a system where you can measure how much water's in a reservoir. You can have all your water tank monitoring systems API'd into RangeView. It's that extra hired man that you have running around checking those things for you while you're doing the tasks that you have to do every day. And so it's just making you more informed, making you more effective, and make sure you're spending your time in the most effective way possible.
So when ranchers are in this program, what data are they seeing? What does that dashboard look like? Can you kind of describe that so listeners can get a visual?
Sure. So it's free to open up a RangeView account. You can go in there, you can set up your ranch locations, you can put in the boundaries of your ranch. You can either draw those boundaries, or if you already have them in a geospatial file, like a shapefile, KMZ, KML, a cadastral file, you can automatically upload. They'll populate into RangeView, and then you can go in and set up your dashboards. And your dashboards can be your local weather. It could be, we have the ability to put in any of the commodity markets. There's really anything that you can go out and get that you're using for information right now, you can bring into RangeView and populate those dashboards to where now you're going to one location, because we know we need a lot of information now to run the ranch. But what can be a frustrating situation is when you're going to 6 or 7 different places to get that information. With RangeView, once you start your RangeView account, you can bring that all in and put that in one place. Then once you have that, you can go in and draw your individual pasture boundaries, and you can start setting up grazing rotations, how many days you could be in each pasture, and it allows you to start to forecast how you're going to run the ranch this year. And then within that grazing management platform, you can start to forecast, hey, we've had a little less rain than we normally have. So you can start setting that up in RangeView. There's different slide bars you can choose to tell yourself what you're likely going to have that year, how long each pasture is going to provide you grazing. And then it allows you to see, okay, I may run a little short of grass this year. Do I need to buy hay? I'm a lot better off to buy hay in May and June than I am to buy it in November and December. So again, it's just allowing you to look at your whole operation from a global view and be better prepared and more informed on how the year is going to go.
Well, grazing management tools and having established plans are incredibly beneficial to ranchers, regardless of their location. So thank you for explaining that, and I think listeners will all appreciate that. Now, from my understanding too, and kind of from information that, that's been sent to me and I found on the website, it looks like there's also kind of some features for alerts and planned moves just to kind of help ranchers stay on track with their grazing plan too. Do you want to talk about that?
You bet. There is that ability to set up alerts or percent utilization. And in a lot of areas, you can also, what the platform will do is once you have your pastures in that platform, you can go, and if you click on the amount of forage that you want to have in that box, so what you can do is you can assign amount of forage per acre. And that allows you to know how much forage that's available for consumption. But we also have integrated the NRCS's, the Natural Resource Conservation Services. They have a platform where they go out and they give estimates of how much forage is in those acres. So if you don't really have a good feeling on what you have there, you can click on that box, you can bring in the NRCS's recommendation, you can load that, and then you can start to build that total amount of forage in that pasture. Then you can assign for each animal what its consumption rate is per day or per month. And once you load that, then the platform starts to forecast for you how many days in each pasture you'll have. And then you can set the alerts up, as you mentioned. You can set it up for 10 days ahead of time, 5 days ahead of time, or you can set it up by percent utilization. If I'm at 40%, send me alert. Or if I'm at 50%, send me alert. So again, it's that extra hired hand out there monitoring those pastures for you, while you're putting up hay or while you're moving yearlings or while you're on the mountain working the cattle you have up there. It's just helping you remember where you're at on all those other pastures.
Well, I appreciate you diving into some of those features and benefits that this program is providing ranchers. What are ranchers kind of saying? What are your customers telling you they appreciate, whether that's, a primary benefit or even a secondary benefit they didn't expect to see from this program?
I think the biggest thing is that one place getting all the information. It's being able to go in and look at their water tank monitoring systems, going in and getting a good look at the weather. And I also say our weather portal that we bring is not just Google weather. It's not just normal open source weather. It's actually a fairly high-end weather where it pulls in weather data from thousands of different private and public weather sites. So it's actually quite accurate for their local area. So they're appreciating having that. They appreciate to be able to quickly see the commodity markets, but also that one-stop quick look to see where am I at? Am I trending ahead or am I trending behind in each pasture? Where are the cattle at? I'm planning to go do this particular thing, and I can see how many days away I am from moving a couple pastures. So I think it's that holistic global view every day of what's going on.
Okay. And when ranchers are measuring the ROI of this technology, what information are they primarily using to measure that return on investment? I mean, you've talked about how it's that extra hired hand and a lot of different things, but where do they primarily see that return on investment coming in?
I think with our forecasting tools, they're able to see, again, as I mentioned earlier, that one of the most expensive things or one of the highest expenses I have on my livestock operation is feed cost. And if I can do a better job of managing my pasture, which is I have the most equity in the forage that's in my pasture, that is my lowest cost of gain. If I can maximize that, I could really use that to help lower my feed costs. Or if it helps me determine where I should put water, using RangeView, with the grazing heat maps, I may see that there's a lot of acres I'm not getting grazed, and that may be because I don't have water in the right spot, I don't have a fence in the right spot. It allows them to see that in a more holistic way and then get more of that lower cost to gain opportunity and equity out of the ranch. It also allows them to spend their time better. So that's less trips in a pickup beating across roads that aren't probably the most friendly roads around to go see something when they could just see it through RangeView and not spend that fuel, not spend that wear and tear, and not spend that labor with maybe a hired hand to go do those things. So they see the benefits and the ripples in the ponds once they start to use this by just being more informed and making sure the time they spend is the best time they can spend.
Justin, is there anything else you want to discuss about RangeView as an individual platform before we kind of switch over to Shane and learn more about Ceres Tag?
I think the one more thing I'd like to recommend with RangeView is get on RangeView, go out, start to look at your ranch from, again, I keep using that word global or satellite view. because RangeView can really help you see where you can unlock a lot of equity, whether it's using our herbicides to get rid of some invasive species, whether it's learning to reconfigure the ranch to get better grazing, but where it's free to get in it and it can provide you a lot of information in that free mode. I just really recommend that people go out, jump on there, take a look, and see what kind of opportunity they can unlock.
All right. Well, Shane, I think it's time to get into a little bit more about what you and your team are working on. So would you mind diving into a few of the primary benefits that ranchers are seeing with Ceres Tag?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest single opportunity that ranchers get with Ceres Tag is an understanding of how much forage does it take to produce an economically relevant output. We've had to assume for years that an animal unit is the best measurement we have of the amount of intake that a grazing cow will intake to produce our economically relevant output. But now, in every contemporary set we want to measure, we can understand who eats 20 pounds of dry matter intake to wean an 800-pound calf, and which cow eats 30 pounds of dry matter intake to wean a 600-pound calf. And how do I make selection pressure on the animals that best perform in my specific environment? So when you're using a platform like RangeView to understand your forage availability, you're also understanding the utilization of every animal in your system with far more detail. You can't improve what you don't measure. And up until now, we've never been able to measure the individual intake of the grazing cow. Now, beyond that, understanding when we have some type of pressure on our animals is equally important for our return on investment on every animal we graze, because we have pressures, whether that's theft, whether that's wildlife and depredation pressure. We have things trying to take the animals from us in one way, shape, or form, and we need to know when that's happening in real time. So being able to pair the intake with high activity alerts that show the exact GPS location of an animal that's being pressured outside their moving average allows me to know, do I have wolves chasing my yearlings on the mountain? Do I have thieves trying to steal cows out of my pasture at 3 in the morning? I'm going to get a real-time notification to my cell phone telling me those things are occurring so I can react to it as it's happening, not days or weeks afterwards, but truly hours after something like this is happening. So when I want to make sure to get my claim put through for an animal that's killed on a forest lease or on BLM or anything else, I walk right to them with my park ranger or my fish and wildlife representative and show them the data of what occurred. So it's no questions asked. Nobody has to be emotional in any decision because we get to have data to support what's going on.
There is a lot to unpack there. And kind of like I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, specifically your two technologies, but also a lot of other technologies in the beef space, I think it's so interesting how much value producers can get from one piece. So, those are some of the primary benefits. Are there more secondary benefits that producers are telling you they're seeing that you want to discuss a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. Peace of mind is a huge one. We've had to assume where our cows are, especially on some of these shared leasing opportunities, for a very long time. We go kick our cows on the mountain and we know they're somewhere within that 100,000 acre forest allotment, but we have no idea where they actually are. We have no idea what they're doing. They're definitely never been telling us how much they eat, how much they rest, how much they ruminate. I get to know, are my cows doing what I expect them to do every day? And it's not that I have to go find that information. It's not that I have to dig for it. In fact, that information is automated directly into a software like Justin's, where you have that information at your fingertips the second you open RangeView when you pair it with Ceres Tag. You have the individual intake of every animal. You have the minutes spent ruminating of every animal. So you see, my forage is better quality and my animals are spending more time ruminating and less time grazing because of it. I am truly seeing the return of understanding animal behavior at a much more granular level. And so that comes with more benefits than we probably want to get into on here, but it comes with a tremendous amount of more comfort because we have a better understanding of our animals, truly.
Well, and Shane, you kind of discussed the ROI a little bit when we were talking about the primary benefits that come from this. Is there more you want to discuss on that aspect as far as ranchers who are wondering, where are they going to see that return on investment?
Yeah, absolutely. It comes in being better stewards of our ground. We can change our stocking rate pretty tremendously on every operation when we start to make selection pressure on which animals are truly most feed efficient in a forage based system. And we have to start with an understanding of which animals are most feed efficient in a forage based system. And that's not always the same as feed efficiency within a concentrate diet system. So just being able to understand, no, I have cows that are eating anywhere from 15 pounds of dry matter intake every day to 45 pounds of dry matter intake every day. Do their economically relevant outputs match that? Because if I take a cow that eats for 2 and weans for 1 and replace her with 2, I just made a pretty easy investment into another $2,000 calf with the same amount of forage utilization off my property. I'm starting to truly understand my animals with much more granular detail, the same way the extensive operations in the yards have done for years.
Now, you guys have done research for the past few years to kind of measure this forage intake, and I'm assuming even compare that to what that might be in the concentrated level as well, too, correct?
Yes, ma'am. So that has been a 15-year research study that's still ongoing with a group called the Commonwealth Science Industry Research Organization in Australia, where they have compared dozens of different grazing and bunk-based system approaches to understand when I tell you that an animal spent 7.5 hours grazing within a 24-hour time frame, it's actually saying, well, that animal did that grazing within this 10-kilometer square. And back to that same open source NRCS data that Justin talked about, here's the amount of dry and wet season grass that's available in that 10-kilometer square. So when we say that an animal spent 7.5 hours grazing, it's using that differential dry and wet season forage availability to dial in that intake with up to 90% accuracy. No one is going to sit here and tell you that it's 100% perfect to say every animal's intake is exactly this, but 90% accuracy is a whole tremendous amount better than the animal unit measure we've had previously that says every 1,300 pound cow eats the same. You and I both know that's factually untrue. We just had to believe it because it was the best information we had.
Gosh, it's probably been close to a year, but I had Dr. David Lallman on, and we talked about mature cow size and feed efficiency, and that has been the standard to the past, but genetics and genetic testing and research is proving that there are outliers in those situations, and there's being certainly more work done to kind of sort those out. And I think that's incredibly valuable for ranchers to know and see.
And I think the most exciting thing is it's those phenotypes automated to where they're already going to go. They want to go to RangeView every day to see all the information that Justin's talked about to make themselves better stewards of the land. But when that information is coming to their fingertips from their cows every day, that's truly a change of approach, because you and I both know how much time in every seed stock operation we spent hand entering data of all kinds off of a spreadsheet or dad's notes that are maybe possible to interpret and possibly not. So we're allowing the animals to give us data, not us to measure the data and then put it into a system to manage it.
Yeah, my favorite is always when someone's about halfway through washing their hands and they pull it up and say, write this down before it's gone, right? Because someone took a pen and wrote on their hands. So, well, Shane, I think, we're kind of approaching a place where we can transition into how these two technologies are integrating. I mean, you've already touched on that a little bit, but before we make that shift, is there more you want to talk about as far as Ceres Tag on the individual level as a technology?
Just making sure that producers understand that the technology itself might seem intimidating to put a solar powered ear tag in the ear of every animal and allow that data to be transmitted directly to their management software. But when they understand the kind of decision making that they can do by understanding exactly what is every cow doing every day, because let's be real, we think we know our cows, but there's also from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock, or 8 o'clock at night till 4 o'clock in the morning, where unless we're crazy and we're just going to go drive them every 2 hours because we're calving heifers, we have no idea what they're doing. We never have. And so just understanding what are the cattle really doing in any given time frame, and are they doing their job to the best of my utilization of my property? That's the big piece, is just understanding how do we be better stewards of the land by being better caretakers of the animals that we've been entrusted with.
So I would like to get your two's perspective on, what is the main benefit ranchers are seeing from integrating these two technologies. And I know, Shane, you said this is where they have to go to kind of get that information and see that. So that's part of it. But let's dive more into that. And either one of you can answer that question.
So I'll go ahead with that. I think Shane just hit on it really well. But I always tell people when we're talking about technology, so technology in the livestock industry is emerging, but it's probably not as far along as technology has been in the cropping industry and in other industries. But one thing I always tell people is technology should work for you. You should not work for it. And Shane brought up a really good point that those tags are now communicating through RangeView to you, and the data is already loaded. You're not working all day, getting home, then sitting down behind a computer screen when you're already kind of had enough of the day to begin with and loading a bunch of mindless data entry. It's already there. You just go there, you see it, it's prepared, and it's informing you. And I really, really believe that is the one of the greatest benefits of Ceres and RangeView together is we're both very good at what we do. And when you combine, when you combine our two platforms, you get some really powerful, very clean, ready to use data. And that gets forgotten, that gets lost a lot of times when you're speaking to a lot of those different technology platforms in the industry.
Shane, do you have more to add on to that?
I just think it's really exciting to be able to share two leading in their class technologies together to say, no, you should absolutely know the forage availability of every pasture that you're utilizing across your operation through RangeView, and you should absolutely know the intake of every cow you're grazing within those operations, so you're truly doing the best job you can of either holding up your end of a lease and saying, yes, I did exactly take half, leave half, and oh, by the way, here's the efficiency with which I did that. I may have had more or less time in that grazing allotment than I thought, but I'm truly doing the best job possible so that when I need to defend that to the landowner, the leaseholder, the BLM, or anyone else who's involved in that process, I have data to make my support statements, not just assumptions.
So it sounds like when ranchers log in to view this information, they can look at kind of the broader picture, group herd level information, and they can also look at individual animal information, correct?
Yes, ma'am. So they can see the individual movement of every cow that's tagged in the system and see where she's grazed in 6-hour time frames for the last 3 years if they want to choose to look that up. If they don't ever pull the cows truly off the range, they can look at a map for as long as they want the tag to be active for and see the grazing movement of that cow and how her efficiency has changed over time. Because the other thing we don't talk about enough is that different cows intake different amounts of feed at different life cycles. One cow eats tremendously more when she's developing a calf, and one cow spends a lot more energy intaking to get herself bred back and back into condition when we first breed her. And so understanding the efficiency of those cows at that level gives us, again, a much better ability to manage our forage and our cattle both to maximize the utilization of each one. We don't want to take more forage than is good for the range. We also don't want to waste forage in cows that are doing a poor job of giving us a calf to go sell at the end of the process.
Okay. Now, on the individual level, what other information can producers enter about their cattle? I mean, breed, date of birth, notes. Give us some insight there as to what all we can put in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So they can put breed, age, date of birth, different visual IDs because they don't want to just count on our device to be the only ID that's in any animal. We understand that, especially where our devices are redeployable. they're going to be reassigning them with the EID or physical ID that they already have in the animal with the unique signature ID of the Ceres tag to say, I want grazing information on this subset, but I also have all these other animals that I'm just managing by their other identification methods. So yes, they can put tremendous amounts of data into the platform and then marry that with, okay, no, I can come back and see the weaning weight of each one of my calves and compare that to the intake of each one of those females across that production cycle. How do I really start to become more efficient?
Okay. Is there more that either of you wants to share about the power of this integration?
Yeah, quickly, I think the power of the integration is RangeView and its geospatial component to be able to see the ranch as a whole and the change in the ranch as you're out there operating. And then that in-depth, very, very precise and intimate information that you get on each animal from Ceres. Again, we've referred to it a couple times throughout our conversation today, but those two things have been separately obtained in the past. And now with this partnership and this integration, you're getting them all at once. And then with RangeView, we talked about that equity, and you want to maximize your efficiency and do the best with the equity you have. Taking Ceres, giving you all that feedback on her grazing performance and on her physiological performance, and then you take RangeView's ability to measure water in a reservoir, to have your water tank, all of your livestock water systems reporting back to you in the gallons that the cattle consumed each day and what time each day they consumed it. Marrying all that together allows you to really come through and find the high performers, help you work through the poor performers, and make sure you're operating at the highest level of efficiency you can. Because the cost of inputs and the pressure on the livestock industry nowadays to be profitable through all the volatility that can come in that industry is very, very meaningful. Right now we've seen some great cattle prices. We're seeing something that we probably haven't seen in a long time, and it maybe takes some of that pressure off of us. But we always need to be conscious that we're doing the very best job and we're as efficient as we can be because of the volatility that can be in our industry.
Now, I know it seems anytime I visit with tech companies, they're always excited about the future and what they're working on and what other new features or capabilities that are to come. So, Justin, since you just wrapped up, would you mind sharing a little bit about what's in store for the future of RangeView and its users?
Sure. You bet. We're working on a mobile application right now. Our RangeView is based on a PC or on a desktop or on an iPad, but we're very close to coming with a mobile application to where you can have it on your phone. You can actually operate it on your phone now, but it's somewhat through the web and it's not as clean as it will be when we get our mobile app. We're working on a release in Canada. We have a lot of interest in Canada. There's a lot of large grazing associations in Canada with multiple operators, and there's a lot of reporting requirements on those grazing operations. They're very excited to use RangeView, and so we're doing that. We're going to have an enhanced remote biomass monitoring where it's more daily and real time. Right now we do very well at forecasting, but we're very close to coming with and excited to come with our remote biomass monitoring, which we're also working on bringing in some fire mapping prediction and current fire maps, which we can get now from some open source sites, but we're excited to work with Ceres on a combined fire map, and I know Shane will talk about that as well. And an enhanced reporting process that we're working on now for RangeView. But those are a few of the things that we're excited will be coming soon in RangeView.
And Shane, what do you have to share?
Because we're very fortunate to be an open platform in the fact that we have numerous software partners and numerous research partners generating algorithms on the platform both. We're really excited for the algorithms that are in development with many of the research universities that you know and trust and attended. And we're really excited to be able to continue to bring on different software platforms. Maybe that's more for seed stock management, understanding that you're still going to need a lot more granularity in some of your decision making from that aspect, and continuing to develop that algorithm suite so that producers can see truly better data in a lot of other phenotypic areas than just grazing. Grazing is very exciting and the ROI is very easy to see on that. But some of the new phenotypes we're going to automate in the next year are going to make producers want the devices even more.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up our conversation today, are there any final thoughts that either of you would like to share with the ranchers out there listening?
As you can tell by looking at me, I'm an older guy. I'm an older rancher myself. But I kind of stand with one foot on either side of the line. I grew up working in kind of the old conventional quintessential rancher where everything was done in the red book in his pocket, and he lived it and breathed it every day. And so he was part of the fabric of the ranch. Nowadays, we know that there's different forces pulling on us. The family demands on us are different than they were back then. And so I always just want to tell ranchers out there, I know that technology seems intimidating. I know there's a bunch of technology everywhere, but embrace it. You need it. Once you find the right technology for you and you integrate it, it pays you back well. It did me when I was a rancher. And don't shy away from it because can be pretty ambiguous and pretty hard to figure out. Stay there and just go to the right people like us at RangeView or Shane and his group at Ceres Tags, and we'll steer you in the right way. Even if it's not our technology, we will make sure you're using the right technology.
Shane, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, just excited to be able to help producers understand that although, yes, this is a big thought of doing digital management of every animal and every grazing system, that they should just get started at a small scale. Don't be afraid to say, no, I think I'm going to implement this on 25% of my animals because they're redeployable. That's super easy to take and scale that up as they go across production years, because I can promise them when they start to understand the data they get from every animal, they're going to wonder how they lived without it. And that's an exciting proposition because we understand we're not going to have any more cows anytime soon. We all know that very well. So making the best of the cows we do have and the cows we can't afford to run on the range is more important today than it ever has been. Yes, it's easy when we make $2,000 to $3,000 per calf to say, things are good. I'm going to make sure I don't have any cost at all. But it's the most important time that we've ever had to make the most of every cow, because going and buying new cows is more expensive than we want to begin to imagine. And so making the most of every one we have is really exciting today.
No, I'm just going to tag on to what Shane had to say, that do get started, even if it's a small investment, just so you can feel it. But also, as he mentioned, with the kind of margins we are getting to enjoy right now, this is also a great time to invest in yourself. It really is. Don't waste this opportunity when you have a little bit of liquidity to do the very things that Shane and I have talked about.
All right, folks. Well, if you are listening to this podcast and thinking, you know what, I want to try that out, or at least at the very minimum, learn a little bit more, because I know I'm very curious about it too as a rancher myself. The links to both of these companies will be in the description. So don't jump to your next podcast too soon. Be sure to tap on those links and check it out when you get a chance. But with that, remember the best way to support this podcast and all of your other favorite podcasts is to leave a rating and review, and better yet, share it with a friend who's going to get value out of this information. But with that, happy ranching, folks.